Hey guys, this is Alex from MTGChallengers. Today we're going to take a look at the deck tech for Blue-White Heroic. Let's go ahead and take a look at the main board here. We have a fairly even main deck. A lot of decks don't have a structure like this. This version of the deck is playing 20 creatures, 20 spells, and 20 lands. We'll start by taking a look at the creatures and we'll go ahead and go down the line. You got 4 of each of the creatures. Starts with Favored Hoplite, gives you a good solid 1-drop. He's also a 1/2, which means he survives a little better in the early game. You've got Hero of Iroas. He's powerful for the deck. Of course, he's a 2/2 for a 2-drop, which is always valuable. He's got the heroic trigger like the rest of the guys. And his bonus ability that makes your auras cost 1 colorless less mana is extremely valuable for the ordeals that we have in the deck, but we'll get to those later on. Third creature, you got Seeker of the Way. Very good situationally, can also be really dead draw. He's a lot harder to make a powerful creature in this deck, but he's very good for the sustain. If you're playing more of a grindy matchup, he can help you out a lot in the long run. He's also pretty powerful against the control matchups because he's not going to get as large as the heroic creatures. They're not going to want to kill him quite so fast. You may get a few hits in with him and deal a good 6 to 7 damage. The fourth creature we've got is Battlewise Hoplite, arguably the best creature in the deck. Unfortunately, he, unlike the other creatures, has dual color, which is where this deck gets a little bit complicated. He's got 1 blue, 1 white mana cost, but his heroic trigger is the best of all of them. Not only do you get to put the +1/+1 counter like everything else, but you get to scry. And that's very valuable for an aggressive, early game, well-linked deck like this, where you need specific cards to go ahead and weed out the extra lands or the irrelevant cards at that point in the game. You've also got Heliod's Pilgrim, which is really kind of where this deck becomes a bit of a toolbox. It's a 3-drop, so it's a little expensive, but it's very good for setting up the win. You go ahead and play the Heliod's Pilgrim. It lets you search your deck for an aura and put it into your hand. You have to show it to your opponent, which isn't too much of a trade back, but you get to grab exactly the aura that you want, and we'll get to the piece later, but I think the best piece to grab with the Pilgrim, you've got Aqueous Form if you're going for the win. It's very powerful. It makes your creature unable to be blocked, or Ordeal of Thassa, and that's just a powerful card for the deck overall, but we'll hit on those here in just a minute. Let's move on to the spells here. You got 20 spells, like I said before, and it's a little bit more widespread than the creature base. You've got 1 Ajani's Presence, which is good overall. It's a 1-drop, gives your creature not only indestructible, but it also gives +1/+1. So you're going to gain a heroic trigger out of it, plus an extra buff, which a lot of the time you'll be able to use that to avoid a specific burn spell, like a Stoke the Flames or a Lightning Strike. Also get your heroic trigger out of it. It's really worth it. You have the additional chance for the late game to strive Ajani's Presence against a board wipe and save 2 of your creatures and still get the heroic triggers out of it. We only play 1. It's kind of more of just a preference card, really. Not all the decks are playing it, and a lot of the decks that do play it in the sideboard. Let's move on now to Defiant Strike. 1-drop, instant speed spell. You get to draw a card, so the generalized term is it's a cantrip. But the creature, you get the heroic trigger because you have to target, and the target gets +1/+0. So it's really good for going in for the win, because you don't just get the +1 from the heroic trigger, but you get an extra added bonus from the Defiant Strike. You can also draw into another spell. I can tell you on several instances from myself and from gameplay that I've viewed, you can Defiant Strike, draw into another Defiant Strike, and I've even seen a link into a God's Willing after that. So you get an extra 5 power just for 3 mana. Super overpowered for the heroic combo. Move on to the God's Willing now. Most necessary card of the deck right here. Target creature gets protection from the color of your choice till the end of turn, and then you get to scry 1. With a Battlewise Hoplite, it's the best interaction you could possibly gain. You get to scry 1 for the heroic trigger, then you move on to the God's Willing and get a second scry. Next spell, you got a 1 of Mortal Obstinacy. Not a completely necessary card. This is really more of a preference base or a meta based call. This card was seeing a lot of play in sideboard. We put it in the main deck for this one because this was a format where Bug Whip was exceptionally overpowered. and you didn't have a main deck answer to whip. If they landed a whip and had consistent enough damage coming across the board, this deck can't beat it. So you put this in there, you can search it out with a Pilgrim, toss it on a guy who's either he's going to get through because they swung out, or you can put it on and double it on a creature that already had an Aqueous Form. Make sure that it hits. The ability is when it deals damage, then you get to sack it and destroy an enchantment. It's also valuable for semi-problematic cards in the format, like Courser Crucifix, who's an enchantment creature. So it deals with problem cards like that. It's pretty good, but like we said, not a necessary piece. You could always put in a different spell. Move on now. Next card, we've got Aqueous Form. Very relevant card, very necessary card for the deck. We're playing 2, very powerful. Like we said, it makes it unblockable, which used to be the phrase, now it can't be blocked. And you get to scry every time it attacks. Like we said, the scry power helps you out a lot in a deck like this, where you're searching for very specific cards. Srubborn Denial, we have a 1-of in the main deck. Now, it's a very generalized card, but when you read the Ferocious trigger, you see it's a very overpowered card for this deck, because you can very easily get to that Ferocious trigger, and then you just counter any non-creature spell. And in any of the mid-range matchups that aren't playing any blue, where they're going to have counter magic against you, it's a real blowout. You've got 1 blue mana open showing and nothing else, and they think they're going for the gold. They throw out a kill spell to kill your creature, and you Srubborn Denial it. Move on to Feat of Resistance. It's another protection spell, like our 4 God's Willings, just to kind of help round out the curve there. It is a little bit more expensive. It's a 2-drop, which is why people tend to play less of it. It's also why we chose to play less of it. But it's well worth the cost. You get more bang for your buck than the God's Willing, because you get the Heroic trigger, but Feat of Resistance gives you an extra +1/+1 counter. So your Heroic trigger, you're not just going to get 1 counter that the creature gives, you can get to put an extra 1 on from the Feat of Resistance, and you get your protection spell. Let's move on to the Ordeals, which are some of the best cards for the deck. Ordeal of Heliod, it's just 1 of, like we said, very, very good situationally. It's kind of like Mortal Obstinacy, really. You need it, but you don't. You can pick it when you want with the Heliod's Pilgrim, and the synergy for the deck works out real well. You take and you enchant it on the creature, and when you target, you get your Heroic trigger. The wording on the Ordeals is unspecific enough that you don't have to just gain the counters from attacking with the creature. It's counters in any form. So if you've already got a Hero of Iroas or a Battlewise Hoplite that has, 1 counter on it, so you're going to enchant it with an Ordeal. It's going to get another one, go up to 2. You swing, bam, you've got 3 right there. It's best for the aggro matchups, so just mono red, but it's not totally unhelpful in the mirror match either. Move now, let's take a look at the 4 Ordeal of Thassa. Really great card for the deck. Same exact wording on how to place the counters and when it sacks at 3 counters, but the ability is to draw 2 cards. So in a deck where you're continuously looping, throwing spells into a creature, this technical draw spell really gives you all the value you need, because you're making your creature bigger and you're getting to draw cards, which will continue to help you save your creature with a protection spell and make it bigger or make it unblockable and just really put on the pressure. And we also have, for the last spell, we have 1 Treasure Cruise. People debate this card, but just like I was saying with Ordeal of Thassa, this deck moves very fast, so you can either get to a point where you've won and you still couldn't cast your Treasure Cruise for a relevant amount of mana, or they're giving you such heavy resistance that you're using all of your spells to keep your creatures alive, and you'll be able to delve Treasure Cruise effectively. Okay, let's take a look at the lands now. 20 lands, like I said earlier. We've got 4 Flooded Strand. Lets you fetch for both of your colors, so right off the bat, you're already getting value. For a 2-color deck in Standard to be able to search for either one of its basics, you're in a good spot. We go to 4 Temple of Enlightenment, which is good. It's a dual source. People would argue that you need to just play all untapped lands since this is a true aggro deck, but you can afford to play it because your turn 1 slot does nothing most of the time. You've got one slot for a 1-drop creature in the deck. That's Favored Hoplite. If you don't have that in your opening hand, why not play a tapped land? You get your Scribe trigger out of it, helps set you up for a better late game. That's totally worth it. We're also playing 2 Tranquil Cove. Like we said with the tap land, gives you the same benefits the same drawbacks. Sometimes you don't need it, sometimes you do. And this land gains you a life, which wasn't the key factor looking for. You just wanted really another dual source. Move on to the basics now in the deck, and we've got 8 plains and 2 islands. White being the dominant color of the deck, 8 was our choice, and 2 island because nothing in the deck costs more than 2 blue. So with 6 dual sources in already and 4 Flooded Strands to be able to search out the 2 islands, 2 seemed like the ideal number to us. 20 lands seemed like our ideal number. It wasn't too many, too few. I know a lot of people who play with 21 lands and they play 1 mana confluence. It's not a bad option. You just lose 1 more spell out of the deck for a greater consistency because mana confluence gives you whatever color you want. And that's it for the main deck. So let's go now and take a look at the sideboard. Alright, in the sideboard here, we've got 3 Lagonna-Band Trailblazer. So you added in the aggro matchups to kind of assist the early game. As a 0/4, it starts off the game being able to block basically every aggro creature, and you give it 1 or 2 heroic triggers and you can kill basically everything coming at you. We have also another Ajani's Presence, 1 of in the board, to couple with our 1 in the main deck. Just helps give you greater consistency in the matchups that you need to give Indestructible for. Basically bring it in against any mid-range deck that's playing a bunch of kill spells, direct 1-for-1s, or playing board wipes. You got a 1 of Erase in the sideboard. That's to couple with the Mortal Obstinacy in the main deck to go against your Whip or Courser, whatever you deem as a relevant threat. It also goes great against Jeskai Ascendancy and Temur Ascendancy, help you get rid of problem cards. We've got an extra Ordeal of Heliod. You want to bring it in against any aggro matchup or the mirror match. To gain 10 life in those matchups, it either will guarantee you the game or give you enough time to solidify your late game. We've got 2 more Srubborn Denials. Most lists prefer to run a full playset of 4 in their 75. A lot of them do 1 and 3. We did 1 and 2 because as relevant as of a card that it is, we wanted to try out a couple of these new spells coming from Fate Reforged. You still want to bring that in the same matchups as like your Ajani's Presence. Bring it in against the mid-range decks and the control decks. It's a very valuable card. We've got 3 Glare of Heresies. Now, Glare of Heresy is a card that's seen a lot of sideboard play lately, and it'll continue to push that way. It helps you deal with problems like Elspeth or Jeskai Ascendancy, but its best value for this deck is in the mirror match, where you just exile their heroic creature after it's like a 4/4 or 5/5. It gives them less options to be able to stop your spell because it's not a destruction effect, so Indestructible won't stop it, so they're forced to either counter it with a Srubborn Denial in the mirror or to play a protection spell against it. We got 2 Valorous Stance in the sideboard. This is one of the new spells that we really wanted to try to incorporate. It's really great in the format specifically. Both effects are extremely powerful. It gives you an extra Indestructible effect if you want to bring that in against the control matchups, but it also has the versatility to be used as a kill spell. So you can use that against the mirror, get another heroic creature from their board off the table. It's very powerful against the Abzan mid-range lists because all their creatures can be hit by this Valorous Stance essentially. Very well-rounded card, helps out the deck a lot, so we wanted to add that in. We've also got 1 Reality Shift in the sideboard, also from Fate Reforged. 2-drop spell, exile target creature. For a blue card, this is a very rare effect for blue to have a direct removal spell rather than a bounce power. So this is something that's highly sought after in the format. It really helps solidify against the aggro matchups and against the mid-range matchups. And the final card of the sideboard, we've got 1 Dig Through Time. You want to bring that in any matchup that you would keep your Treasure Cruise in against. So any of the mid-range specific matchups or any of the control matchups would also be valuable. Dig Through Time is the preference call, really. For the sideboard, a lot of people still play extra Treasure Cruise, but I like Dig Through Time better. Yeah, it costs you 1 more blue mana, but rather than just drawing 3 cards, you get to take the top 7 and look for a specific answer, which a lot of the time is really what you need. Alright, that's our deck tech for Blue-White Heroic, for Fate Reforged Standard, main and sideboard, and Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and join us again for the next one.